evening. Thank you all for coming. We're very glad you could be here. My name's Kendra Trachta. I'm the Deputy Director for Sno-Isle Libraries. And I'd like to welcome you to Coupeville High School this evening for tonight's Sno-Isle Libraries Issues That Matter program. This year, we have focused our community discussions on issues surrounding public health and safety. Earlier in the spring, our discussions were on the topic of gun violence, and tonight our discussion is on bullying, which is an issue we're all concerned about. So later this year, we will be scheduling other Issues That Matter events, so please keep an eye on our website, and I hope you'll attend our events in the future. All of these community discussions are made possible by funding from our Sno-Isle Libraries Foundation. And I would like to ask any donors or Sno-Isle Foundation board members who are here tonight to just raise your hand. Let's give all of them a round of applause. Because they make events like this that bring the community together to talk about important things possible. I would also like to recognize our Board of Trustees. Sno-Isle Libraries is governed by a group of volunteer trustees who keep us on track with what our communities need and want from library service.
Excuse me?
Yes?
Could you raise your microphone?
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for mentioning that. And I would like to recognize them as well. I believe we have one trustee here, Marti Anamosa. And we do have another community leader in our audience. I'd like to recognize Sheriff Mark Brown. I would like to take care of a few housekeeping issues. First of all, our emergency exits. Nothing's going to happen, but our emergency exits are right out both sides here. The restrooms are out this entrance and across the foyer. And it would be very helpful to your fellow audience members and our panelists if you would please silence your cell phones. And if you do need to take a call, we'd really appreciate it if you would answer and step outside for your conversation. We are filming tonight, so we ask that if you plan to take any photos, please turn your flash off. And because we are filming, we will have a transcript of tonight's program available on our website. I'd now like to ask our Island County Trustee, Marti Anamosa, to come forward and make a few remarks. Thank you again for coming.
Hello, and thanks a lot for joining us tonight. As a member of the Board of Trustees of Sno-Isle Libraries, I'm proud to see Sno-Isle bringing together these distinguished voices that we have here tonight for this discussion. Our public libraries are really proud to serve a vital role in making it possible for people to come together in a friendly, neutral environment to discuss important community issues, share ideas, explore ideas, and seek solutions to concerns such as bullying. Even though Kendra's already mentioned it, I too would like to recognize the Sno-Isle Libraries Foundation and its funding of Issues That Matter. The Library District really appreciates the work of the foundation in providing funding for a whole collection of programs that get our little kids ready to read, that keep our school-age kids reading and involved in their communities, and provide opportunities for adult education on a whole variety of fairly interesting topics. Thanks again to the foundation, and thanks to the donors of the foundation that are here tonight. We're honored to have Chris Jury as our moderator for tonight's discussion. Chris works at Snohomish County Health and Safety Network, and is driven to help our youth become proud, strong contributors to our communities. There you go.
Thanks so much. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. It's good to see. It's a good, robust crowd for a Thursday night. You've made it despite several other sporting events and other things you could be at. So we appreciate you taking the time. Before we do anything else, it's really important to recognize the role that the Sno-Isle libraries and libraries in general play in our communities as a real hub for not only cultivating and encouraging and maintaining a lot of the freedoms that we cherish, but the idea that an entity can bring us together around important topics that might not be the easiest thing to talk about, topics that really matter to us. So it's really vital that these sorts of things happen, and it's really vital that we have a great library system that can do that for us. I'm really proud to be able to serve as your moderator for tonight. We've got a great panel of folks here who are going, and I think we're going to handle this topic pretty thoroughly. Between the five of you, we'll be good. So here's how we're going to operate tonight. We'll let everyone on the panel have 6 to 8 minutes to do kind of an opening, kind of introductory sort of statement on the topic of bullying. And after that, then we'll open it up for Q&A. And so our job up here as panelists will be to do a good job answering your questions and to be as thoughtful and as smart as we can possibly be. And your job as audience members is going to be to generate the questions. I assume everyone got some 3x5 cards and a pen and something to write with. Generating the questions that are going to allow us to get to the heart of what matters to you about the topic of bullying. Answer those questions and make some progress there. We've got a whole bunch of stuff we're going to try to get through tonight. So what we're going to try to do is keep the applauding and booing and hissing, which I hope there won't be too much of. We'll try to keep that all to a minimum as we go through the program. So why don't we take this opportunity right now to thank everyone for being here. So that's how we'll do it. And after our Q&A session, we'll give everyone a minute or so to wrap up, and then we'll all go on our merry way. All right? So I'm going to come out, make a really bold statement here, that bullying is bad. Okay? I don't mean to shock anyone, but bullying generally not a super great thing. All right? The other point that maybe is slightly more important and maybe less universally thought of as correct is that it's easy for us to think of bullying as a youth issue, peer on peer, and it happens amongst kids, and then they all grow out of it and everyone's fine. And that's really not the case. I think it's easy for us to understand that bullying doesn't stop when we get to be a little more grown up. I think we've probably all had workplaces where we had a bully working with us. We also have to realize that it's very possible and very common actually for bullying and dynamic kind of inequalities to be happening between young people and the adults in their lives. So it's important for us to always remember that we're the adults and we have to model what good behavior is. And it's not okay for us to act as bullies in our lives, either to other adults or to the young people in our life. And the other thing that just occurred to me the other day was that we have to recognize that the different modes of bullying or the different subjects or the different reasons why people are bullied aren't kind of discreet and oriented just for young folks. Those things exist in our societies as a whole, so we can't be surprised when young people are bullied because of race or creed or sexual orientation if we're creating a society where those issues are a reason to mistreat other people. We can't be shocked, if our young people are racist, if we permit racism in our society. We can't be shocked if young people with different sexual orientations are bullied, if that's something that's okay in our society as adults. So, I just want to leave you with that, and I'll introduce our panelists. And we'll start at the far end with Mike Donlin, who works with the School Safety Center for the Washington State OSPI. OSPI stands for Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. You'll hear that one a lot. So before joining OSPI, Mike spent 30 years as a teacher and program administrator for the Seattle Public Schools and has developed a widely recognized cyberbullying prevention curriculum. Mike is a board member and secretary of the International Bullying Prevention Association. Next is Charlene Ray with the Island County Human Services. Charlene is a mental health supervisor for Island County, coordinating countywide school-based mental health programs. Bullying prevention is one of this program's primary focuses, and Charlene has over 27 years' experience working with children, youth, and families. And then next is Casey Scott-Mitchel, who is with the Cada Island County. And Casey is the Education and Prevention Coordinator at Citizens Against Domestic and Sexual Abuse, CADA. And before coming to CADA in 2011, she did a similar work for a women's shelter in Texas. Casey is currently pursuing her master's in social work from the University of Washington. And next is Lori Stolee, who is with the Coupeville Middle and High Schools and is the assistant principal and athletics director. It's a lot of names. And she previously was the director for the Prevention Center at the Northwest ESD. That's ESD 189 based in Anacortes. And she has implemented anti-bullying and harassment policies and curriculum and conducted extensive training on bullying, conflict mediation, gangs, and natural helpers. And last, but certainly not least, Detective Ed Wallace with the Island County Sheriff's Office. Ed has been a police officer for almost 27 years, started his career in the Army as an MP, and has been with the Island County Sheriff's Office since 1990. He's federally certified to conduct computer and cell phone forensics and cybercrime investigations. And Detective Wallace works with CADA to present anti-bullying classes in the community. So, thanks everyone for being here, and we'll start at the far end with Mike on opening presentations.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. As we were talking before, we were talking about definitions and the words that we use and how important that is. And so I thought, as a kickoff, I would start off with some definitional terms and then tell you what the state's doing. Let's talk about bullying itself. Not all bad behavior is bullying, and unfortunately we hear the word used quite a bit. Bullying, as a topic of conversation, bullying refers to intentional, repeated, negative behaviors that are done with some kind of an imbalance of power, and that are done pretty much with the perpetrator not really caring what the other person feels like. So it's the intentional, negative, repeated, bad behavior kind of things we're talking about here. When we talk around bullying, we usually talk about bullies and victims. However, better words to use would be targets and the ones who bully. And we try to use those words in the conversations to indicate that, once a bully, always a bully. No, bully is a learned behavior, and someone is not, an individual is not born and is not a bully per se, but it's something that he or she has learned how to do. On the other side of the coin, targets, we like to think that we're working with our young folks, and that a target is a moving target, and we can also give that person the skills to dodge the bullying, if you think of it in those terms, as opposed to being a victim, a poor me, I'm never going to get away from this. So those are the kind of things that we use, the kind of words we use in talking about bullying. The other thing to keep in mind is that bullying is not a standalone activity. It really is a community effort. And a community effort in terms of there has to be that target, there has to be that person who's doing the bullying, and then really and truly everybody else involved, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Other people know what's going on, have a sense, can see something or hear something, or we as the adults should know or see or hear things. So we should all be part of the process of preventing and intervening in the whole process here, in the whole bullying prevention world. With that said, what are we doing in the state of Washington? We're really ahead of the curve in Washington. Lots of states now, 49 out of the 50 states, have something on the books that have to do with bullying and bullying prevention. We actually have one of the top pieces of legislation in the country. There were 4 states that had their legislation, their policies and procedures that are being studied more in depth by the Department of Education, and we in Washington are one of them. In the state of Washington, the legislation lumps together harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Now these are not exactly the same, but they're very closely related. So we also often talk about HIV, not HIV. We talk about HIV, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. And within the definition that the state gives, we do include cyberbullying. So it includes electronic forms of bullying and harassment, intimidation as well. It's stated right out there in the law. One of the interesting things that the legislature did when they passed the legislation defining and mandating that we have something on the books, that each school district have something, the legislature did something kind of unusual, and they said, OSPI and several stakeholder groups, you write model policy and procedures, make sure they're all good, we cover all the bases, and every school district in the state, 295 districts, you have to adopt that model policy and those procedures. It's one of the one of the very few times, if not the only time, when everybody has the same thing. The only option for a district would be to say, we're going to take that model policy and those procedures and even make it stronger. So looking across the state, 295 districts all should have almost exactly the same wording for their policies and procedures. And they also said, let's just not leave this on the books. Let's just not leave this on the website or put it on a piece of paper. Let's make sure there's somebody in each district who's involved in implementation of that policy and procedure. So every school district also has an individual, kind of like the go-to, who is called a compliance officer. And that person is the one that if things aren't happening in the classroom, in the school, that families and parents can go to for additional help and support. He's the person or she's the person who receives investigations of bullying that goes on in school. So there's a point person in every district. So you as moms and dads, as families and grandparents and aunts and uncles, you have somebody you can go to in your district beyond simply the school if you feel that there's a need to do that. A couple of other things in that legislation, there are timelines there are processes for reporting and for investigating incidents of bullying that you think are not being dealt with appropriately at a classroom or a school or a district level. So you can do that. You can indicate that you need some more help or that something needs to be really thoroughly investigated. So this is all part of our Washington State legislative approach to harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Also, the requirement for training. So all staff, when the legislature talked about staff in a school, that said everybody from the principal on down to the custodian, everybody, and the bus drivers included, need to be aware of and understand the policies and procedures and what to do and where to go next. So if everything is implemented across the board, we're all aware, we're all listening, we're all looking, and we're all protecting our young folks. I didn't mention this the last couple of times, but there's some handouts here that give some of this information and that also break out the distinction between what is harassment, what is intimidation, and what is bullying. And there are some different legal implications for each of these. So in terms of lumping them together and distinguishing among them, there's some information on there out here that will do that. With that as a backdrop, we're doing quite a bit of work around the state of Washington. And if something's happening in a school or in a district and a family doesn't like what's going on, I get a lot of calls in my office around that, so we have a lot of conversation around what are the resources, what can you do, what do you have, what are the hands-on things that you can take back with you into the school and into the district for some help. I'm going to stop right here because I know we got a lot of people to talk, and we'll have questions later.
Good evening. She was 8 years old, our first day of grade 3, when she got called ugly. We both got moved to the back of the class so we would stop getting bombarded by spitballs. But the school halls were battleground, where we found ourselves outnumbered day after wretched day. We used to stay inside for recess because outside was worse. Outside, we'd have to rehearse running away or learn to stay still like statues, giving no clue that we were there. In grade 5, they taped a sign to her desk that read, "Beware of dog." To this day, despite a loving husband, she doesn't think she's beautiful because of a birthmark that takes up a little less than half of her face. Kids used to say she looks like a wrong answer that someone tried to erase, but couldn't quite get the job done. And they'll never understand that she's raising 2 kids whose definition of beauty begins with the word mom, because they see her heart before they see her skin. That she's only ever, always been amazing. This is from a poem, maybe some of you recognize it. It's called To This Day. It's by Shane Koizan, who's a spoken word, an amazing spoken word poet, who speaks a lot about the subject of bullying and acceptance. And that particular poem is quite a long poem, and you can see it on YouTube, and it was read at the Olympics in Vancouver, spoken by Shane, and he's quite an amazing guy. But it's very powerful. It's filled with very powerful stories about bullying. And one of the things that's really important for me to start with is that there are no bullies. There are people who bully. And you talked about that a little bit, Mike, with our language that we use around targets and ones who bully. And one of the things that we have to work on in our education is getting away from bullying as an identity. Bullying is a behavior and an action and not an identity. And so that's a very important place that we work with in the school-based mental health programs, and I'll be telling you a little bit about that. But first I wanted to just give a little overview around why bullying happens. Many of you may know that, but it's good to think about. It happens for a number of reasons, and as Mike said, it has to do with power and control. And there could be any number of ways and forms that bullying takes, from physical, hitting and kicking and stealing, and verbal name-calling, and eye-rolling and gossip and exclusion are also bullying behaviors. And also there's the racial, religious, sexual, disability, all the ways in which we can be mean to each other and hurt each other. So those are things to be thinking about. And why it happens is often to fill a need, and the need is about having control. And it spikes at various different times in the lives of people. Often transitions are a time that we see more bullying. Our Healthy Youth Survey that students in the state take in the 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade, and in Island County, that supports that data that in transition times, bullying spikes, and particularly from elementary to middle school. That is a time, so the transition times are often times of social uncertainty. There's often a need to establish a hierarchy if you think about middle school or think back to middle school. And those are the times where the identity, your self-identity is a little bit more, you're questioning it, you're insecure, and you can perhaps become a target, or to avoid becoming a target, you can become one who bullies. And one of the things that there's been many studies, what we notice about bullying is that, and in the Healthy Youth Survey it also supports, that bullying can then lead to depression, and then can lead to thoughts of suicide and actual suicide attempts. There's also been some recent studies, including one in the American Medical Association's study that bullying increased the risk for depression, conduct disorders, substance abuse, and 60% of boys who bully in middle school, according to that study, had at least one criminal conviction by age 24, and 40% had 3 or more. So why do we want to know this, and why is it important? And the reason why is that can inform what we can do. And so what can we do about it is the big question. So the most effective interventions do not target one group. They don't target just the targets, or they don't target the ones who bully. They teach all students about relationships and empower youth with skills. And the best programs help youth learn about themselves and how to interact with others. And we have a school-based mental health program. We'd start to talk about what we're doing in Island County. Island County Human Services has a program that employs 7 school-based counselors in the 4 districts in Island County. And we partner with CADA and Casey to do some of the curriculum around the issues of bullying and relationship skills. So we have, we're not in every school, but we're in every school district, and we respond to all of the issues that come up around suicide and crises around bullying and depression. And this program is definitely geared towards prevention and intervention of bullying, and since that's the issue we're talking about tonight. We definitely do a lot of psychoeducation and counseling around many issues, but definitely deal with bullying on a daily basis. And we have been working to bring more programming into the schools that promote social and emotional competency for all students. Last year we brought, if some of you don't know Houston Kraft, it would be good to look at his website. He calls himself a kindness advocate. And we brought him to the schools, and he talked about healthy relationships, and he doesn't really use the word bullying very much. He talks about empathy and understanding and behavior and making a choice and choosing love as the message. And I think I will stop there. There's a lot I can talk about, and really wanting to just say one thing about our responsibility as a community. Bullying is our responsibility as a community. And as was said, it begins with us as adults, as role models, and we'll probably say more about that as the questions come in. But I'll turn it over to Casey now.
Thanks, Charlene. I first of all just want to say thank you to Sno-Isle Library for having us. This is an honor to be here. So I want to back up a little bit and talk about prevention, because again, I think it's good to kind of define the terms that we're using. I think obviously we all know what prevention means, but what does that look like when we're talking about bullying and broader social issues? So at CADA, we work primarily with people who have been affected by domestic or sexual violence. And there are a lot of really great intervention services available in our community to address these broader issues. But there's been a push recently, especially in the domestic and sexual violence field, to start kind of going upstream and thinking about how can we prevent people from getting to the place where they need our services? How can we prevent them from ever getting into that abusive relationship? So bullying is one of those entryways into teaching kids about things like how to have a healthy relationship, how to communicate effectively and in a healthy way. What does respect look like? How to identify healthy things in a relationship versus unhealthy things. How to get help, how to know when to get help. So prevention programs are working on instilling kids with those skills so that eventually, hopefully, we can prevent them from getting to the place where they need those intervention services. And again, bullying really, it's not just happening in schools, as Chris mentioned. And really when we examine what's behind bullying, as Charlene said, it's about power and control. And so many of the issues that we deal with, especially at CADA, domestic and sexual violence, it's about power and control. So if we can teach kids to have relationships based on dignity and respect, rather than power and control, then hopefully, again, we can prevent those issues later on. So that's where we come in at CADA. A lot of people think, you work with victims of domestic and sexual violence, why would you be in the schools? But that is the reason to prevent those things. So I just want to speak a little bit about our programs at CADA. We are at all grade levels. We serve the whole island, and at this point our programs have been in every school district, which is really great. We're very proud of that. We have the Hands and Words program at the elementary school level, which works primarily around bullying, and it is K through 5. Then we have our Healthy Relationships program in the middle school, which starts to examine more peer relationships. So we start to talk a little bit about romantic relationships, primarily still focusing on friendships though, and how to have healthy peer relationships. And then in the high school, we have our Safe Dates program, which really starts to explore dating relationships, and it gets into the broader topics of dating violence and sexual assault. And again, you know, that's a program that has taken many years to build up, and it is something that we're very proud of. And you know, my director always says we're trying to work ourselves out of a job, essentially. We would love to have a community where people don't need services for domestic and sexual violence. So in our prevention programs, and what I like to focus on primarily in our prevention programs, whether it's kindergarten or it's seniors in high school, is I like to focus on the theme of bystander intervention. And this is something that has proven to be effective in research. So what we know about bullying is that primarily in most bullying situations, there is someone there to witness. There is a bystander. And so with that, if we can empower kids as bystanders to stop the situations that they're seeing, really that is the quickest way to shut down many bullying situations. And what research shows, and anecdotally this fits for me as well, when bullying is happening, the first ones that are likely to know about it, they're not the teachers, it's not the family members, it's the kids, it's the peers in school. Whether they're telling each other, whether they're the ones to witness it, they're the ones who see it on Facebook, they're usually the first responders, they're the front line. So again, if we can get those kids who are the bystanders and equip them with the skills to stop this and to stand up and make a difference, that really can be an effective response. And in my experience, it's a lot easier to approach the subject of bullying from a bystander perspective, rather than, like Charlene said, trying to say, okay, we're just going to talk to the targets, how not to be a target, or we're going to talk to the kids who bully, how not to bully. It kind of takes the stigma out of it. And it's a very empowering message to talk to kids about how you can help others. And it has proven to be very effective in my work as well. So in bystander intervention, what I talk to kids about is I really try to talk to them about all of their options as a bystander. And I do like to talk to them about all of their options. I think sometimes as educators, we just want to give them the right options. But what I find is that kids already know the right answer. But then there's the right answer, and there's what they actually do in real life. And 9 times out of 10, not just kids, but we in general as humans, what do we do when we see something? Usually we walk away and we don't do anything because it's awkward and it's uncomfortable and it's scary to get involved. But I talk to kids about the fact that when you're a witness, when you're a bystander, you're involved no matter what. So no matter what you do, from that point out, your actions have consequences. And whatever you do, it's going to send a message. So if you walk away and you don't do anything, you're sending a message to the person who is bullying, and you're sending a message to the person who is being bullied. You're also sending a message to other bystanders there. And again, I connect kids to the idea of, is that the message do you want to send? Do you want to send the message that you don't care, or that you're okay with this happening? And most kids don't, because most kids do have that little voice in their head that's saying, this is wrong, I'm not okay with this, but it just kind of takes that little push to get to stand up and do something about it. So I really try to talk to kids about what kind of person do you want to be in your life. Not even just thinking right now, but you picture yourself in 10, 20, 30 years. What kind of person do you want to be? And are you making those decisions right now as that bystander? And I have found that that is a really empowering discussion to have with kids. Finally, I just want to say, as a community educator, I've had the unique perspective of being able to go to different schools and see different approaches to bullying. And I think the most effective approaches are those holistic approaches. Having the great school policies, having engaged staff and personnel at the school, having engaged parents, empowering the kids to stand up, involving community partners. I think it's the schools that really acknowledge we need a community-wide response and acknowledging that we all have a stake in this issue. Thank you very much.
Good evening and welcome to my house. This is my first house, I think, not my second house. I feel like I live here. I'm an assistant principal and I'm the athletic director here at Coupeville Middle and High School, and I've been given the honor and the privilege to work with our most treasured people, our little people, our big people, and our big people, our parents too. And for me, obviously, as an assistant principal, it's about academic achievement, but also recognizing as our school mission is, and I wanted to read that we strive to provide students with optimal conditions for learning by maintaining a school environment where everyone is treated with respect, no one is physically or emotionally harmed. And then we have to also realize that people come to our building with all different kinds of backgrounds. We come in different sizes, we come in different shapes, we come in different colors, we come with different backgrounds and histories. And we come with people who appear strong but are fragile, people who are strong, people who can help other people be strong. Our school district is a recipient of every one of these people sitting up here, from the schools, from the policies, from the state, from the mental health in our schools, to Casey coming and being a presenter in our health classrooms, to our students after school, to Detective Wallace doing cyberbullying for our students. So we're the recipient of all these services up here, and we're very thankful that we have them. In a school, just like Casey said, it's really about the people who work here, and in any school. And in our school, which we could say in all schools too, but this is my experience right now, is we have very caring, empathetic people who want to be very good role models for our students. And one thing that we're doing in our middle school, we have started doing, it's a program called Positive Behavior Intervention Supports. And what our goal is to teach students to be respectful, responsible, and to be safe. So what they're going to be learning, and they do learn, respect, responsibility, safety. And then we actually teach them how to walk down the right side of the halls. We actually teach them what a voice level is inside the building, because that's what respect is. You can have an outside voice outside. What's it like to be at an assembly? What's the behavior that we expect? Because we know if we teach it, students will learn it, and if we reward them, they will continue. And so this year, my focus has been trying to work on rewards, and tomorrow is our very first reward, and we're doing Gym Riot, and we will be duct taping teachers to the wall, and it's hilarious, and it's really a riot. I mean, it's kind of what it's called. But so that's really what's going to be setting the environment of our school is our three goals. And then what we do after that is we have all kinds of programs. In our health classes, we do Second Step, and that's we want to say bullying, but it's really about environment, substance abuse prevention, and so we do that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We also have a program in our middle school called Natural Helpers, and that's for our 7th and 8th graders, and it's Friends Helping Friends. And we actually take them on a retreat. I teach them good communication skills, what you can help your friend with, and then what you need to refer your friend for outside support. It's critical in our schools, what research tells us, if there is one adult in our school that our children can go to, they're going to get the help they need. And so, I mean, it's just one adult, and it doesn't have to be an administrator, it doesn't have to be a teacher, it can be our custodians, our maintenance workers, the women in the kitchen, our school counselors, teachers, our classified staff, it's everybody. So it's just one person who can reach out to that student, and that student feels comfortable to go and talk to. And like I said, I have a wonderful support team of people. We have our mental health counselor, Miss Raven, who's out there in the audience. We have a half-time counselor this year at the middle school. We have a full-time counselor at the high school. Never enough services for our kids. We need a lot more. And we need a lot more places to refer our kids who have trouble, but we have things in place, okay? Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is, another really cool thing that we're doing in the middle school, and as you can kind of tell, my focus is really the middle school, because if we can make a change in the middle school, we can start making a change in the high school, is we started a program last year called Empowering Young Women, and Mr. Black and I noticed that our young girls just didn't have healthy self-esteem. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to show girls that they can have really positive role models, they can learn from other women who have either risen to success on the easy road and on the hard road. And that life isn't always easy, that there's bumps and hiccups and challenges to get there. And so we invite other women to come in and talk to them about their career, their challenges in life, how they got there, how, their road, their journey in life. And I guess, let me see, what else do I want to say? Students, I never shut up, do I? I always talk. Really, I guess what I want to say is my job is really developing our students to be empathetic and very understanding and very tolerable. I don't really like the word tolerant, but to understand differences and to accept differences and to be okay with differences.
Good evening. My role in this line of work is technology. You constantly hear that technology is making life better. Unfortunately, in some cases, especially in the case of bullying, can you hear me? Sing on?
Oh, that was me who turned it off.
Hello? Okay, that works. In the case of bullying, technology is making things worse. It's exasperating it 1,000 times over. I hate using the term back in my day, but I realized how old I was getting until they pointed out I'd been in law enforcement for 27 years. When I went to school, and I went to the Oak Harbor School District, the bullying was there, the problem was bad, the situation is bad, as it should be, but it was isolated to my school or my peers or my group of people in the school. Somebody in Coupeville may have heard about it. Somebody in the language school, or Southern School District probably didn't even know about it because it didn't travel. We now have a situation where people like to say you live under a microscope. It's reversed. Our kids are living on a billboard, and it's a billboard broadcasting across the world. The technology has made it to where they can take a situation that used to be in the halls of the school and now plaster it across the world. And people that have no stake in it, no business in it, or anything else will chime in on it. And so now we have, and I'll use the term a victim, we have a victim or a target that is now getting it not only from their peers and the people they know, but 500 other people they don't know from around the world or the country that are firing on them too. A lot of our targets are children or people that tend to use the internet or the cyber world as an escape. They can go there, they can be safe, people can't bother them. And now this is being ripped away from them too when the situation happens. Now they're being bombarded from everywhere. And this is how things compound and work up from there. The state of Washington got it right. With the cyber stalking law, it is very plain, very straightforward, very blunt with what it is. And I won't read it, I can't recite it verbatim, but basically it says, if a person with the intent to intimidate, torment, harass, or embarrass another person using electronic means is basically guilty of cyberstalking, which is all cyberbullying. Cyberstalking is the broad catch of cyberbullying. That crime is a gross misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine. If you throw in the person's race, religion, or sexual preference, that now becomes a felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. The state got it right. The burden of proof in this crime is simply the person that is the target does not take it as a joke, does not believe it was a joke, believes it was harassment. That's the burden of proof we need for that. So we talk about friends joking back and forth, or kids play pranks on each other and stuff like that. As long as it is on the same level, everybody involved believes it is humorous or a joke, it's fine. When it crosses the line to where the person, the target, does not believe that any longer, then it starts with the crime. Becomes a crime. Where we're fortunate now, in law enforcement, we used to be the end of the line. When it got to us, we were the end of it. We were the things that had happened, and we were too late. We were reactionary. Now with these programs, with CADA, the programs we have done, the schools have invited us in, we're laying this out early for the children. We can intervene with this and help the situation. And I'll be honest with you, we do not want to be involved in it. We want to deal with it at the lowest level possible. The parents, the children, the teachers, the staff, and work it out at that level. We don't want to bring it to our level because, again, that we are kind of the final step to this. And it's not genetic, it's a behavior. It's a learned behavior, and a learned behavior can be unlearned. So we need to, so we're trying to do this through education, and we have had great success with this. We do a combination bullying, internet safety class like that. And it's worked out very well to where we are having less incidents, it seems, as time goes along. Every once in a while, we'll get the Twitter attacks or the Facebook attacks where, one child ends up being the target of their friends and their groups, but they're coming forward. As Casey's saying, the intervention part of it. The people that are seeing this are contacting us so we can intervene early on before it gets to the point that some child kills themselves over this. And I'll be very honest with you, we have had that situation in this county on a couple different occasions over the years that a kid was pushed to the point where they could not take it anymore. They had nowhere to turn, they believed they had nowhere to turn, nowhere to go, and they took the only step they could take, or they thought they could take. Fortunately, if I can remember correctly, since we've been doing these programs in the schools, we haven't really had one in that type of situation. We may have had other aspects with it, but not solely based on a bullying type situation. Our other goal is to educate the parents. The internet's a scary place. It really is. And if you're over the age of 30, you do not even, in some cases, can even start to fathom what your kids are dealing with today, living on this billboard. I mean, everything they do is tweeted, posted, commented on, photographed, and put up for the world to see. I mean, if I did something silly in school at some point, 100 people might know about it. If I do something silly now and someone posts it on the internet, 100,000 people will know about it. And the other thing the internet has done, technology has done, it's allowed us to generate a whole new culture of, we used to call them paper tigers, but cyber tigers. People that would not say boo to you face to face, but hiding behind that keyboard, they will launch the most obscene things towards anybody they can because there's no consequences and anonymity behind it. So we're really trying to gear up with this and give a broad platform to show the parents and give the kids some tools where they can deal with these situations. I guess that's it.
Great. Thank you all. And so we will start with the question section. So I've got a couple questions here, and if you've written down questions, we have some staff folks who will pick them up from you and bring them up here. We will do our best to get to as many of them as possible. So, all right. So because we've got a big panel, maybe we'll ask that just one or two people who want to speak the most on any given topic will do so, and then we'll move on to the next question. That's all right. And our first question is it ever okay to tell someone who is being bullied to fight back?
you guys missed my joke. I said I'm very chatty, so hopefully I will not monopolize this panel, I promise. So this is something that I encounter quite a bit in my prevention programs, talking to kids. A message that comes out quite frequently is, shouldn't I just fight back? Whether it's on their own behalf or on someone else's behalf. And again, I go back to, let's weigh the pros and cons. So I really, instead of saying, no, that's bad, right? Because, that doesn't really lead anywhere. I find that kids want to talk about it. I try to explore with them the pros and cons and talk to kids about, first of all, is this an effective long-term solution, which usually it proves not to be. And second of all, usually when you fight back, you're putting yourself at risk in that situation. And again, I think there's a difference between fighting back and standing up for yourself, which was something that we kind of talked about a little bit before before we came on stage. So I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to that.
And what I'd just like to add on that too is many times what people will say, well, and we could talk about physically hitting somebody. Well, I always teach my child that if somebody hits them, they hit back. And what I always tell my students is, when we're in school, usually people aren't hitting you. I mean, sometimes things rise to the occasion of a fight, but that's something completely different. But usually, if I'm out in the society and somebody is going to hurt me, that's a completely different situation. And that's how I give examples to our students. And then when we also talk about healthy relationships, bystanders, we also talk about how can we stand up for the person who's being picked on. And really, there's some of us, and I tell them, the Stolee is probably the type of person who's going to say, stop, that's really mean, I don't like that. And that's the kind of student I was when I grew up. I usually spoke for other people because I could talk a lot. And there's other people who might not feel comfortable to do that, and it depends on the situation. So really, it might be about grabbing the person and saying, hey, let's go and let's leave the situation. Remove them from the situation. For somebody else, it might be going up to the person later and saying, I'm really sorry that somebody said that. That wasn't very nice. Or do you want to go talk to somebody about this? So there's different ways that all of us can stand up and different ways that we can all intervene.
We've got kind of two questions that we can kind of cram together, I think, here. And those are, besides transitions, what other factors, family, social, cultural, or et cetera, predispose a child to adopt bullying behaviors? And if you are a parent who suspects that their child is acting as a bully, what is it you can do?
Sure, I'll start that. So I'll start with the first part of that question about what factors might contribute to bullying behavior other than transitions. So that could be actually any number of things, and again, going back to looking at power and control. So kids that feel powerless for some reason. So we think about abuse and trauma, and even things that we might not think about, and being careful not to say that things like divorce or a death of a family member will lead to bullying behavior. But it would be something to look at as when we're taking an overall assessment of what's going on with this child, because they may feel out of control and may feel powerless because they can't do anything about the situation. And also, so there's any number of things. I mean, having a disability of some type that makes them feel different than other people, or being different in any way that they perceive, and sometimes it's just a perception, could cause them to either become a target, and it depends on the personality, whether you move inward or whether you're going to protect yourself and move outward with your behavior. So there are many other factors besides transitions that contribute, and other people. Someone else might want to say something.
Just more like adding to what you said. We talked about the risk factors for being a target of a bully, of bullying situations and the risk factors to become that perpetrator, that one who bullies. One of the things we also know is that if someone is bullied and is also a bully, if you will, that increases, that's a double whammy for that young person. So just a quick thumbnail would be, a bully target. We don't talk about bully, but bully target, someone who gets it on one side and uses it on the other side. That person is doubly at risk for all those things that Charlene was talking about earlier.
Anyone else?
What was the second?
The second part of the question was, what would you recommend a parent do if they suspect their child is acting as a bully?
I think being willing to have a conversation and actually acknowledge the behavior. I think sometimes as parents, and I am a parent myself, you want to believe the best about your child. And I don't think that you have to give that up in order to have this conversation and acknowledge that there's some problematic behaviors happening here. So I think really having the conversation and then also working with the schools and working with the resources. There are so many amazing resources in this community and on the internet. Talk about how technology can make things better. There are so many great resources out there for parents who want to get involved and be engaged in this conversation.
Another hat that I get the privilege of wearing is being the disciplinarian at the middle school and the high school too. And for me, discipline is really usually more about talking with students, either side, depending on who comes to me first, and people get hurt. So I mean, this goes back to also being a parent and being worried about your child, is there's usually something else going on, and I'm just talking obviously in broad statements now, but typically it's getting somebody to realize what they said was really hurtful, because lots of times when I hear, well, I always talk like that with my friends, or my friends always talk like that, and well, maybe you talk like that with your friend, but this is what this person felt like. And when I think it's the appropriate time, I bring that person down so they can see how hurt that person was, because we want to develop back the empathy so they can understand. And always, it's, gosh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean that. And that's my job as a teacher, is to help educate our students so they can kind of learn how their actions are received and how other people, perceive them.
And we've got a great follow-up to that, which maybe Ed could start with, which is what happens, or what do we do with unresponsive parents of the young person who's acting as a bully, maybe parents who are in denial or simply don't care?
No. The best thing I can say to that is to try the engagement first. Engage the other parent, gauge their reaction, and you will know the person you're talking to. If you're talking to a wall, it'll come out very quickly. And if that doesn't work, you can always speak with the school. You can speak with some other resources on the internet, everything else. But the trick is, and it all falls along the same lines, is to be engaged. Engage with your children. Engage, with the. I would like to believe that if two adults are talking about this situation, they will both act like adults, but unfortunately that's not the case a lot of times. You really just need to approach the situation, and you need to approach it rationally. If you go in there fully loaded, mad, engaging the other parent, the response you're going to get back is probably going to be fully loaded and mad, and above yours to respond to what you're doing. And that's a lot of the questions we ask when we deal with almost anything with the sheriff's office is, with neighborhood disputes and stuff. Our first question usually is, have you spoken with your neighbor? Have you told them that whatever they're doing is annoying, wrong, whatever else, and then come talk to us afterwards? This is a case where we like to be, again, the last part of it, to intervene, because unfortunately by the time we show up, sometimes a minor situation can be made much worse by our arrival. Because now things have gotten to the point where other serious things may happen.
So I would also say that, it kind of depends on the situation, but if there's a parent who's not responsive, there may be a limited amount that you can actually do with that. So sometimes you just have to realize that that's the way the situation is right now. So then, as Ed says, maybe I can go to the school and talk to the counselor there or the assistant principal or someone there to begin the conversation. And you're just perhaps going around it from the other side or the other end. And perhaps the counselor at some point or someone from the school can have a conversation with that parent. Because if, for example, you're another parent and you're a parent of the child who's the target, that's pretty loaded right there and may be difficult for this other parent, for whatever reason they may not want to admit what's going on with their child, any number of things. So you may have to go around, first through a school counselor or someone from the school, and eventually you may get to that parent. But you may not, and that's the hard part, is that we can only do so much in controlling other people's behavior. Ultimately, it's only our own that we can control and are responsible for.
All right, so we'll switch gears here just a little bit. We got a whole bunch of questions about cyberbullying, and so I'll try to combine as many of them. I'll try to combine as many of them as I can into one question, and maybe the best way to do that is to ask, what's the best plan of action when information is being put up or posted online that's not factual? Is there a way to work around that or to try to reel everything back to reality?
The term I use when I teach the internet safety to the kids is you can't put the genie back in the bottle. The unfortunate fact is, in the world we live, is that the internet is forever. Once it's out, it does not come back. And that's why when we do the classes with Casey, we try to explain to the kids that simple thing you do now on the internet that you think is funny may not be funny when you're 25 and applying for a job. Once it gets out, we can't get it back. So it's more damage control at that point. It's more, realizing that and trying to, ease into that situation with the child and say, this is out there, we know it's not true. Because the more you respond, we find the more you respond to something like this is basically the more gasoline you're putting on the fire. And any one thing you do to respond will bring back 15 negative responses and fire it up again. I think that.
Yep, I'm going to double up and underscore what Ed said there. One of the things that's the real challenge with cyberbullying is we know bullying, we're the adults, we're talking about what's happening about young folks. We don't see it unless we're really, really astute, really aware, or unless somebody brings it to our attention. We don't see it as bullying in the real bricks and mortar world. We see much, much, much less in the digital world. And so somebody has to let us know what's going on. So part of the conversation is show me, talk to me, let me know what's going on, have a real conversation with the young folks. And then again, to underscore what Ed said, tech savvy as young people may be, they don't fully grasp yet that it's totally public, it's totally permanent. You can have all your safety measures out, but it's totally public, it's totally permanent. Once you hit send, you can never take it back. And once you hit send, you've totally lost control of where it goes next. And if they begin to think in those terms, that will really help what Ed's talking about.
And to add on to this a little bit as well, parents, and this is the part we teach in the parents class as well. If your child has a Facebook page, you should have a Facebook page. If your child has a Twitter account, you should have a Twitter account because you need to watch what's going on. Because they will not always come to you and say this is a problem, and their friends may not always pop up and say this is a problem, and by the time you find out through backdoor channels, we've got a lot of damage control to do. If you are watching what's going on, what they're posting, what they're saying, what they're blogging about, you will be that much further ahead if a problem occurs. And it's also a safety thing we deal with in our classes where, who's talking to your children? Is this not only a bullying thing, but maybe, some kind of more dangerous assault type thing later on? So you should be aware. And if you don't feel comfortable having a Facebook account, you should at least have access to your child's account. You should be able to see what they're doing. Again, back in my day, the TV was the babysitter, now the internet's the babysitter. The internet is a horrible babysitter. Think of the internet as a sex offender babysitting your children. That's about as blunt as I can put it at this point.
And we've got, I think, a good follow-on to that, and this is a question that came up at previous forums, which is, what's the school role in bullying that takes place outside of the school?
And I take a deep breath. Because what the school policy and rules are and what we have control over is what happens at school and during school hours. And then we have to take a look if something outside of school has an impact on the learning environment, all right? And so that's the questions that I always have to ask myself. Is this something that really happened outside of school and doesn't have any bearing on the learning environment? But then what I can usually do, and that's why I took a heavy sigh, is because if I have a relationship with our students and with our parents, then you can do some talking and some understanding and make some phone calls.
And I just want to say, having been in the Oak Harbor School District and the South Whitby School District, I think that they have very similar policies. If they do find something that has happened outside of school, specifically cyberbullying, is affecting the learning environment, then they have the license to deal with that like it happened in school.
And that actually brings up a very good point. We had a case on South Whitby where we had a young lady being harassed by Twitter, and people were tweeting and posting things about her over just harassing and haranguing this poor young lady, and it was affecting her in school. And that's how the school got involved and helped, ease things in, and we got the situation solved.
And the big aha. The policies and procedures and the laws and so forth that are on the books basically talk about all the things we have to do to protect our kids with our technologies in schools. And we have sign-offs and super requirements and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Aha, the cell phones, oops, mine's going off right now. The cell phones and other communication devices are outside of that. And so we don't really have quote-unquote control over it. But the reminder is, as Lori suggested, as Ed suggested, these walk in and out the doors in backpacks and pockets all the time. And so just simply walking in the door, that young person may be carrying whatever he or she is being victimized by in the pocket and can't get away from it. So the other piece of it is that when it hits inside the school building, what I hear all the time from principals and assistant principals and so forth is, God, we had this fight. And they have to work with the fight. They have to discipline around and deal with the fight situation without knowing that actually what's in the pocket is what's the cause of the fight. It's been going on over the weekend, so there's a whole challenge with that. Physical manifestation versus the technological cause of what they see happening.
And so our next question, which I think is an interesting one. Faced with a world filled with models of bullying, internationally, governments, media, entertainment, and Seahawks fans, it's here, it's not me, it's on here. Do kids, especially our older kids, actually believe us when we say bullying is wrong?
Yes, they know that. And a couple of people have mentioned the Health and Youth Survey, and there are other surveys, both nationally and internationally, across the board, across the country, across the world. Our young folks are saying, we know this is wrong, we don't like it, we don't know, we don't want it to continue, we don't want it to happen. And the next part of that response was someplace built into the questions is, but we don't know what to do about it, so that's all the work that people are talking about here. What are those preventative things? What are those early interventions that we have that we can work with? How do we make sure we protect ourselves and our friends, our peers, when that stuff happens? But yes, they know it's wrong.
I'll just add to that that's our experience too when we're working with kids, is that they do know it's wrong. And one of the best things that we can do is have conversations with them about it. They bring it up often, about bullying behavior that they see on TV or on the internet or in the grocery store or driving in the car with someone or among our politicians or all the different places where it happens. And that goes back to our responsibility as role models. These people are in positions of being role models. We're role models for young people. And so having conversations with them about this is the most important thing we can do. Because most of them, they do see that it's wrong and they don't want it to continue. And they see that it's their future and they want a different future. So those conversations are really important.
And if I could just add, I agree. I think most kids do have that voice in them where they know it's wrong. I think the kids, though, that want to fight back and that might be exhibiting these bullying behaviors, usually it's coming from this misguided sense of justice, getting justice, whether it's something happened to them or something happened to their friend. So again, I agree, and I just want to reinforce what Charlene is saying. It's really having those uncomfortable conversations and not just saying, okay, here's the right answer, this is it, but actually exploring, okay, what does it look like when you fight back? What's going to happen after that? And is that going to work out for you? Is that going to work out for your friend? So I think allowing kids to actually explore those options really can be helpful.
And here's a question that I think kind of explains a little bit about where bullying goes to when we don't do much about it, and it'll go right to cases. Got the mic, that's good. How does one protect themselves from verbal bullying as an adult, such as being in a marriage that someone can't leave for financial reasons? Book recommendations, other groups that provide support. What can you tell us?
Well, we actually have a domestic violence support group starting up in October. So anyone who's interested, we have brochures right over there for that outline our CADA services and has our contact information. I think also for someone maybe who wasn't at a place where they were willing to acknowledge, okay, this is domestic violence, but they just wanted to talk to someone about it and how to cope with this. We have advocates available who can kind of walk people through what their choices are. And sometimes people think at CADA we're here to tell you what to do or that you should leave this person. That's not what we're going to do. It's an empowerment-based model, so it's the person's choice, and we respect that and we support them. I will say though that one thing I think we would want to do with that person is safety plan and make sure that they felt safe and that they had a plan to keep themselves and especially if they have children safe in that situation. I don't know if there's anything Charlene wants to add to that.
That comes up quite a bit, and part of the conversation that often comes into my office, again, is around that same kind of a thing. The laws that we have for what we're talking about here, school-based bullying, deal with kid-on-kid stuff, and or kid-on-adult or adult-on-kid stuff, but not adult-on-adult. However, within the state of Washington, not so much on the domestic violence abuse, but within the state of Washington, we also have an amazing resource. It's a national resource out of Bellingham, workplace bullying. So it's happening in the workplace on adult situations. I think it's workplacebullying.org. Is that the correct URL? But they do research on specifically adult situations at work in a workplace.
All right, and we've got time for one more question. And this is one that's also come up at previous forums. It's related to what we referred to in the past as snitches get stitches. Can anyone comment on the confidentiality of information given to schools or police so that a child is not put at greater risk with their peers for having disclosed information?
Actually, we still use that today, so that term. But we try to work within what is in the best interest of the victim or the witness. If we are going to seek a criminal prosecution, we have to be able to have signed statements and everything else. If we're seeking to intervene, mitigate the situation, we can do that anonymously. We don't have to worry about naming names. It's when, where our line is when we are going for a criminal prosecution, we have to, the theory of the unnamed informant doesn't fly in the state of Washington. You will be, if there's a criminal case and you're a witness, if we wish to have a prosecution, unfortunately you will be sitting on the witness stand testifying about what happened. But a lot of times, and hopefully a lot of times, we can solve the situation before it ever gets to that point. We have people tell us information all the time to say, hey, I want you to know about this, but I don't want to put it in writing. And then we can go out and find ways around it to get what we need to even deal with a criminal prosecution if we're going to do it on our side of it. We're always willing to listen, we're always willing to take the information, but our point is, sometimes we can't act without the solid name behind the information.
And on maybe a different level is in the schools, kids know that they can come to myself, to different people. I can't always promise them I won't use their name, but I always tell them I will tell you if I have to use their name, use your name. I should be a very good investigator that I can do the exact same thing, that I can go and say, this is what I heard. The biggest problem that lots of times that we have in middle school, though, is I always have to go back and tell the student, now, somebody's going to say, you probably talked to me, and that's going to be because they guessed that. And I'm telling you right now, you did not tell me this, because it didn't have to be you. It could have been somebody else, but they're just guessing. And you get to choose how you respond to that. And I've had kids go back and say, oh my gosh, I told Miss Stolee this. And then we have fallout. But, the other thing is our school policies have in place for retaliation. We don't allow for retaliation.
I just want to say I think this reinforces the approach of bystander intervention, because again, I think so many kids are hesitant about reporting because of this very reason. And so again, equipping them with the skills to interact with each other and interact in a proactive way as a bystander, I think is a very powerful thing.
And stepping down a few years, starting with the younger folks and then using age-appropriate language as it moves up. In prevention and intervention program conversations with young folks, we talk about the difference between tattling and telling, where tattling, and kids know this, they get this right off the bat. Tattling, you're trying to get somebody in trouble. Telling or reporting, you're trying to get somebody safe, get somebody some protection, some safety. And so carrying that conversation up age appropriately through the years is a big part of bullying prevention work. Also, back to that whole policy and procedures we have in the state, embedded within the policy and procedures are the requirement that schools and districts have methods somehow or other to anonymously report things that are going on. So it's possible to report without actually putting your name or your face forward. And then it falls on the school. The challenge is then for the school to try to find out what really is going on. And it may be, I hear Charlene's name once. Well, I don't know what's going on and try to pay attention to that, but if I hear her name over and over again in different contexts, then I have an awareness on my part that something, I may be having a conversation with Charlene on the one side or the other for something, but we do require that there is anonymous reporting processes and procedures in place.
Just want to make one comment about that what we have noticed in our program is that we have more young people reporting. And part of that is all the education that's been happening. But it really has increase the amount of reporting that's been happening, and particularly it could be happening right there at school, or a cyberbullying, or something that's been posted on Facebook. The kids are coming in and talking about it, whether it be bullying behavior or whether it be someone just posted on Facebook last night that they're, they're feeling down and thinking of hurting themselves, and they're coming in and getting some help for their peers. So we're really encouraged by that.
And I'm sure that I saw one around the school on beforehand, but the Safe Schools tip line posters, I think they're kind of ubiquitous throughout the state. That's really good. All right, so we've kind of come to the end of the Q&A session. So we're going to give each of our panelists a minute or so for a closing statement to have them, and we'll work our way the other way, so we'll start with Ed.
First, I'd like to thank the foundation for putting this on and allowing us to be here. The schools, again, for allowing my office to allow the police officers to come in and speak with the children and help educate. Kata for putting up with police officers for so long as they have, and letting us get the word out, because we're almost in the same boat. We'd like to have a situation where we don't want to have a job anymore either. And we have seen an impact of this. It has helped. Our reporting is up. Our education is up. I'll close my part of it with what I close my parents' internet safety classes with. If you are the parent, be the parent. Don't be their friend, be the parent. You can do both, but don't just do one. You have to know what's going on. You have to be willing to intervene and talk to them. They're not robots, they're not kittens. You can't leave them to their own devices and they'll take care of themselves. You have to be able to engage them. Stay with them, and they do listen. I mean, they may pretend like they don't listen, but when you leave, they're going, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Engage them, be the parent, be there for them.
Okay, how do I follow that? Actually, I don't think I'll ever be without a job, because my job is to educate students, and so it's in their journey of life. And what I think I'd like everybody to think about for a moment, because what comes to our school is what's in our audience, is what kind of a child were you? What kind of children did you raise? Were they strong-willed? Were they not strong-willed? Did they have a lot of self-confidence? Didn't they have self-confidence? That's what we're talking about here. And then we take it to a different level when we get to, severe bullying, severe harassment, something like that. But I was thinking of my granddaughter, who's almost 2, and my daughter's devastation that she doesn't like to share her toys. And I said, have you taught her how to share her toys? We all give her toys. We let kids win. We have to teach people how to behave, and that goes back to our school, goals of respect, responsibility, and safety. Teach people how you want them to behave, reward them for the appropriate behavior, and we'll have a wonderful society if we can all do that. And the last thing that I really want to impress upon you, for our youth, it's one adult. It's one adult who cares about them and is there for them. And it doesn't have to be the school. It's you. It's the community. It's the grandparents. It's the neighbor. It's the police. It's everybody. It takes all of us to raise our kids. And thank you for being who you are. Thank you for being here tonight. And thank you for supporting everybody's efforts. I appreciate all of you.
I just wanted to end by saying a little bit about prevention. And I just think that in order for prevention to work, whether we're talking about prevention of bullying, prevention of domestic and sexual violence, whatever it is, for prevention to truly work, I think we actually have to believe that it's possible. We actually have to believe that it's possible to have a world where kids can go to school and feel safe and feel accepted, that we can actually have schools where bullying doesn't happen. And I think that when we actually believe that, and we instill that belief in our children, then that's something that we're going to start seeing more widely. And again, I just want to thank all of you for being here, and thank you again to the library.
I too am very grateful for this conversation, and just the fact that we're having the conversation is
really important, and I'm grateful for the library and for all of you for coming. And for me, it's about having conversations, and having conversations with our children and having them early, very early, teaching them early the skills about how to be kind, how to have empathy for one another. Those are important skills that will take them through life. And we also need to teach them about their technology as earlier than probably that we think about responsible, safe use of the internet and phones. And kids have them very early. I've seen 8-year-olds and younger with cell phones and computers. And if they have them that early, we want to supervise them, again, be the parent and supervise them, and we want to teach them how to use them. And not be afraid to have the difficult conversations, because we can make a difference. We, as a culture, are part of the problem, and we can all be part of the solution.
Well, you all said it all. Thank you. Yeah, again, thanks everybody for coming tonight and for the library system. And the last couple of words, I think just 2 or 3 words come to mind. One is community, one is conversation, one is creating climate, and all of us have to be ready to be that trusted adult for a young person to go to if need be. Thank you.
So, I was just going to say it's time now. We've waited long enough to applaud everyone. We didn't. Good job. So we've come to the end of our allotted time, and before we do anything else, I want to make sure we all remember to fill out our evaluations that we got on the way in. And there's a white box just by the resource table there, if you could drop them off on your way out. So we want to thank the library for doing such an amazing job and really being that hub of civil discourse that makes this country and this county and this town so great. So let's give them a big round of applause too. And thank you all for doing all the hard work of generating these amazing questions and coming out tonight and being part of it. So let's go home. Good night.